She had told him specifically not to come back. Not we should take some time. Not I need space. She had used the word don't, standing in the doorway of her apartment with her badge still clipped to her collar because she hadn't taken it off since the debrief, and he had not argued. He had simply inclined his head, the small, precise angle Sarathi used for acknowledgement, not agreement, and left. That had been 11 days ago. Mara had counted because counting was easier than the alternative. On the 12th morning, someone knocked. She knew it was him before she opened the door because Asenve knocked in a rhythm no human ever used. 3. Then 1, a full second later, like he was announcing himself in 2 separate thoughts. She stood in the hallway of her own apartment for 4 full seconds, deciding whether to answer, and answered anyway, because not answering felt like a decision she wasn't ready to make either. He was holding a small case, the kind used for temperature-sensitive cargo, and he did not smile because Sarathi don't have a face built for it. What he did instead was tilt his weight very slightly onto his back leg, the posture his species uses when they are bracing to be told no. "I was told not to come back," he said. His English was, as always, exact. He had never once used a contraction in 14 months, and Mara had never told him that was one of the things she'd catalogued about him, too. "You were," she said. "I am aware this does not resolve that instruction." He held out the case. "I am asking you to open this before you close the door. After that, I will accept whatever you decide." She should have said no. She had rehearsed no several times in the 11 days. Some versions were short. Some involved a lecture on Sarathi protocol that she had no standing to give. None of the rehearsed versions accounted for him actually being at the door, holding something, waiting with the specific patience of a species that did not experience waiting as discomfort. Instead, she took the case, because her hands moved before her judgment caught up, and she was already learning something in the half-second it took to unlatch it. That it was cold to the touch, climate-controlled, which meant whatever was inside had traveled from somewhere that required it. Somewhere off-station. Somewhere he would have needed advance clearance and a reason on file to requisition transport for. Inside, packed in gel foam shaped precisely to its contours, was a single dried sprig of Ioba leaf. Mara did not move for a long moment, because her body reached the memory before her mind did, the specific, private, nowhere-in-her-file memory of standing in her grandmother's kitchen at 11 years old, crushing Ioba between her palms because the smell settled her when nothing else could. And she had not smelled it, not once, not anywhere on this station, in 6 years. It did not grow off Earth. It did not travel well. Bringing it here meant someone had gone through customs, biological screening, and a currency conversion loss of roughly 40% for 4 grams of dried leaf. How, she said, and it was not really a question because she already suspected the answer and did not want it confirmed. "You said the word once," Asenve said. "Month 4. During the trade negotiation regarding atmospheric processors, when Delegate Hernack raised his voice, and you did not respond to him for 11 seconds. I asked afterward what had occurred. You said, and I am reciting this precisely, I just wanted the smell of Ioba is all. Stupid. You then resumed the negotiation and did not raise the subject again. Neither did I until now." He had said month for the way other people said last Tuesday. Mara realized, holding the leaf, that she could not have told him what month it currently was without checking, and he had never once needed to check anything about her at all. "You requisitioned off-world transport," she said slowly, "for a plant. I filed it as a cultural artifact acquisition," he said. The description was not inaccurate. I did not specify for whom, or why, because the form does not request that information, and I did not wish to lie on an official document if I could instead simply not volunteer detail I was not required to volunteer. A pause. "I recognize this is a distinction that will not comfort you if the file is ever audited. That's not what I'm worried about right now. I am aware," he said. "I mentioned it regardless because precision matters to you, and I did not want to begin this conversation with an inaccuracy, however small." She should have closed the door then. She opened it wider instead because there was a second, smaller compartment in the case, and she had not looked at it yet, and some part of her, the part that had spent 14 months learning to read Sarathi posture the way she read syntax, understood that he was not finished making his case, and that this was, structurally, exactly what it looked like. A delegate presenting evidence. The second compartment held a data chip. "I would ask you not to view this in front of me," he said. "I am aware of what it contains, and I do not require the confirmation of watching your reaction. I would find it," he paused, which he almost never did, because Sarathi do not typically need to search for words in a language they have already mastered completely. Difficult. Mara turned the chip over once in her fingers. What is it? Every session log from our 14 months of collaboration, time-stamped, in which you paused before answering a question that was not about the negotiation. A beat. There are 41 of them. I annotated each with what I believed. At the time, you were considering instead. You kept a file on me. I kept a record, he said. The way my people keep records of anything we intend to argue for later, in front of an authority that requires evidence rather than assertion. He held her gaze, which for a Sarathi took visible effort because their eyes are built to track motion, not maintain contact. I am, in this instance, arguing to you. This was the part she had not expected, and the part that made her stop reaching for the door at all. Why now? She said. 11 days after I told you not to come back. Why not before I said it? Because before you said it, I did not yet have my reassignment orders. He said this the way he said everything factual, evenly, without inflection, as if the words could not possibly cost him anything, which was, she understood now, exactly the performance she had spent 14 months mistaking for the whole truth. I received them 9 days ago. I depart in 3. Something in her chest did something complicated and fast. 3 days. I am aware, he said, that arriving with evidence of my attentiveness 3 days before a permanent departure has the appearance of manipulation. I considered that. I concluded I would rather be accused of manipulation than leave without you knowing I was paying attention. He inclined his head again, that same small, precise angle. My people do not report attachment because it is dangerous to the individual. We report it because it is dangerous to the mission. I did not report you. For 14 months. For 14 months, he confirmed. I would have continued not reporting you indefinitely. The orders removed that option. I am not here to reverse your instruction. I am here because I did not want you to spend the rest of your life certain that what you felt was not seen. Mara set the leaf down on the counter, carefully, the way she handled anything she was afraid of dropping. You don't know why I said don't. I have a hypothesis, Osenve said. I did not act on it without permission, because a hypothesis about your grief is not the same as an invitation to discuss it. Say it anyway. Your previous posting ended when a colleague, Devon Marsh, died during a first contact negotiation you were translating. Station records list it as an equipment failure during atmospheric transfer. You have never once, in 14 months, referred to it as an accident. He said this without inflection, which she understood now was not coldness. It was the only way he knew to say something true without making it heavier than she could carry standing up. I believe you concluded, at some point after that posting, that being necessary to someone was a liability you inflicted on them. I believe that is why you said don't, not because of anything I did. Because of what you were afraid I would become to you, and what you were afraid that would cost me. Mara did not answer immediately, because he was right, in the specific and unbearable way that only someone who had actually been paying attention could be right, and she had spent 6 years making sure no one got close enough to be right about it. I'm not going to get you killed, she said finally. That's not the shape of it. You're leaving, that's the whole danger. I don't get to be the reason anything happens to you because there's nothing here that can happen to you except a transfer order, and I still can't stop that from mattering. Then we agree on the mechanism, Osenve said. We simply disagree on whether that makes the 14 months a mistake. Mara had spent 11 days building a version of the last 14 months in which she had imagined the whole thing. The pauses that lasted a fraction too long. The way he'd learned to bring reports to her desk instead of sending them. The single time he'd used her first name instead of her rank, and then never again, as if he'd caught himself. She had needed it to be nothing, because nothing was survivable and something was not. Not after the last posting, not after Devon, not after she had promised herself she would stop being the person who noticed things nobody else was supposed to notice. She looked down at the Ioba leaf, then at the chip, then at him, standing in her doorway with his weight braced on his back leg, ready to be told no, having clearly decided that being told no with the truth on the table was better than being told nothing at all. 41, she said. 41, he said. I could recite them in order if that would be useful. I do not believe it would be. I believe you already know which ones I mean. She did. She knew immediately without being told, which was the worst part and the only part that mattered. 3 days, she said again, because she needed to hear herself say it out loud before she could decide what to do with it. 3 days, he agreed. I am not asking you to resolve 14 months of restraint in the time remaining. I am asking you to let me spend it accurately, whatever that means to you. I will accept the answer either way, because I have already done the part I came to do, which was to make certain you knew. She stepped back from the door. Not an invitation, not yet, just enough space that the question of whether he could come in was no longer answered by the doorway itself. You didn't have to bring the leaf, she said. The file would have been enough. The file was the argument, Asenve said, stepping over the threshold with the careful economy of movement that had once made her think he was cold, and that she now understood was simply a species that did not waste a single gesture on anything that wasn't meant. The leaf was not evidence. The leaf was for you, regardless of what you decided about me. I did not want you to go another 6 years without it. Mara closed the door behind him. She did not close it because she had made up her mind about the 3 days, or the reassignment, or what came next in a version of this that had no template, because no one on this station had ever written one for this. She closed it because for the first time in 11 days, the apartment did not feel like a room she was defending. She set the case down on the counter and picked up the sprig of Ioba, crushing a small piece of it between her palms, the way she had at 11 years old, the way she had not let herself for 6 years, and the smell settled her chest exactly the way she remembered. Asenve watched her do it and said nothing, which she was beginning to understand was, for him, the loudest possible thing. What happens after the 3 days, she asked. If I say start with today, what actually happens? I do not know, he said, and it was the first time in 14 months she had heard him admit that about anything. My people do not have a protocol for this. There is no filing category for it. I looked before I came here, because looking for the correct category is what I do when I do not know how to proceed, and there is no category. I would be improvising for the first time since my training concluded. He considered this, visibly, the way he considered a difficult translation. I found that I was not afraid of it. I want you to know that, regardless of what you decide. Not knowing the category did not frighten me. Only the possibility of leaving without telling you did. Mara turned the leaf over once more in her fingers before she set it down. I don't have a category for it either. Then we are equally unprepared, he said, which I did not expect to find reassuring, and yet. She almost laughed, the first almost laugh in 11 days, because it was such a precise, careful, Asenve way to say me too. And she understood, finally, standing in her own kitchen with the smell of home in her hands and 3 days on the clock. That precision had never been the opposite of feeling something. For him it had only ever been the shape feeling took. 3 days, she said finally, start with today. He inclined his head a third time, and this time she was almost certain it was not the gesture for acknowledgement at all.